You probably clicked on this video because you are looking into your astrology or someone else's. You could be cross-watching or whatever the case is. This is to help depict in your mind how it can look like to have Saturn in the 8th house. And before anything, my name is Steph Garci. I do astrology for fun here in YouTube. By the way, anyone who watches my shorts, those are funny videos, okay? They're not meant to be so detailed, so please don't take it to the core heart. Take it with a grain of salt. And yeah, let's get right into it. So Saturn in the 8th house, there's a couple examples of celebrities that have this, and let me tell you, this placement, well, Saturn in any placement is not really technically easy. Saturn is a cold planet, cold energy, very restrictive, fear-based. Based on my knowledge that I know of, karmically, well, technically it has to do with karma, but karmically has to do with your neglection of past life, you know, if you believe in that, of course. But it's interesting because the 8th house is money, the depths, you know, hard topics that people are scared to talk about, unless some people are very open-minded. It really depends on the person or the context of things. But Saturn here may give you fears of being in debt or being used for money or responsibility, sharing resources. Also, it restricts you from receiving right away from other resources. But we'll get more into that because that really depends on the person in the context of things. And remember, every chart is so personal and so detailed, so complex that you can't really base off of Saturn as a whole in this 8th house. Keep in mind that every chart has its own aspect, so maybe your Saturn is conjunct something or another planet, or it can be squaring something, sextiling, like it really depends. But I'll tell you mainly the essence and the themes and what can possibly happen. Again, take it with a grain of salt because your personal chart is very complex. Very, very complex. So the first example or celebrity that has this is Michael Jordan. Yes, he is literally a legend. So this tells you a lot. Well, does it? It really depends. So I'm going to give you 3 examples, but if you notice with these 3 examples, one of them is Michael Jordan, you're going to realize there's a common denominator with all of them in some sort. But let's start with Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan has an interesting way about how things happen to him. So I'm going to give it to you in a very concise way of his life because I'm going to try to get through 3 examples. But basically, he got dropped out from his team, I think in high school, because he wasn't tall enough. Again, that's Saturn's delay. And also, the 8th house is about rebirth and a lot of these things. So he had very intense, disturbing experiences here in the 8th house. Remember, the 8th house is not just about the taboo and other people's resources, but it's so dark. It's this place where no one really truly sees what is happening within you in such a energetic level. And yes, he had to work really hard. And by the way, he has Aquarius Saturn in the 8th house. So Aquarius is known to be for the collective community. Notice how he inspired basically everyone when it comes to basketball. He is a big inspiration to the collective in general in the world, actually. So that tells you a lot. The Aquarius, you have to kind of take an account with which element and what zodiac, because that brings more of the essence of that energy. But he had a really tough life. Like, don't think it was all dandy and great. He lost his father. His father got murdered. I know it's so disturbing and shocking. And Aquarius rules Uranus, so it has that shocking effect. And also he has Lilith in the 4th house, which kind of correlates with the racism that I personally see it in his chart that he went through, and what his family had to endure during that time, especially back then. The farther you go back then, the more discrimination there was. There still is. Oh my gosh, right now everything is wackadoodle, but in other regards, from going back to history, it was very brutal. So during his time, he did face not some, but a good amount of racism, and that wasn't very easy for him and his family to grow up in. And on top of that, his father got murdered, and that also led him to retire temporarily without him knowing, with his basketball career. And also, he went through a couple sports before he happened to realize this prodigy of himself of basketball, but he wanted to be a baseball player because it brought him close to him and his dad loved baseball. But notice how there was that restriction. It just didn't happen. It didn't work for him, but the basketball did. What Saturn to me showed me here for him is that he really had to put in the work, like truly put in the work. Once he got cut off the team, I believe he was like really focusing on himself, honing his skills in such ways that kind of pushed him. And also it inspired the collective and community and his teammates. And well, the way I like to see is whenever I see Saturn, I try to look at Aquarius or Capricorn, where that is. He has Capricorn, Venus in the 7th house. So he was, me personally, the way I see it, he was meant to work with other people, with team, like there was a part of him that learned humility, that learned to be humble, to basically guide others rather than just be like the bossy person or just take over his power in such a irresponsible way. Also, Saturn here probably made him responsible in such bigger ways because of the break that he happened to have in this world. So he had to, I think, first divorce. He had children with that first wife, and he had to give like a lot of money to that person that I know of. I know there was some affairs. I don't know exactly what has happened in his personal relationships romantically, but usually there's like something karmic with his personal relationships, especially if it's very intimate. And yeah, there's a big responsibility when it comes to having Saturn here. It's very scary to hold that responsibility, but it makes you build muscle. Is a little bit of his example. Okay, the second example I have is Robert Downey Jr. Holy crap, his is crazy. Like, his experience in life, I can say, is probably like the most inconsistent, crazy, unpredictable kind of life. And I'm not saying that is him, but it's rather his experience of life. And do I know him personally? No, but based on the story that I just read about and heard about and all the things that he experienced, he really embodies that Pisces Saturn because his life was just out of control, up and down, very fluid, very like, whoa, very addictive. And it's not really his fault. His story is actually really sad, like really, really sad. So he has Pisces, Saturn, 8th house, and then he has Neptune in the 4th house, Scorpio in the 4th house. It's already hard. Leo risings in general, they may shine very bright in this world, but they go through so much here on Earth. But yeah, basically what happened in his life was that he grew up with his parents. I think he has an older sister, and his mom was an alcoholic. His dad was a drug addict or something of that sort. His dad introduced him to drugs, I think weed specifically, at the age of 8, and that is how he felt like he bonded with his father. Very sad, I know. Neptune in the 4th house. But it's not his fault. Like, everything he has experienced has so much to do with his transformation as a soul, like psyche level, as especially emotional for him. And it's funny because his chart is very similar to my draconic chart, so I kind of understand. I don't want to say I understand fully because I don't know him and how he truly feels, but basically, long story short, he somehow, because his dad was a director, film director, his mom was an actress, he kind of came about in that pathway as well, and people were very drawn to him. You know, he has his ups and downs with his career, but then he had really bad experiences with his own personal life, with addictions, alcohol, drugs, like all that kind of stuff, experiences. He went to jail, he served jail, but during the jail times and incarceration times that he's gone through, he also was being asked to be in certain roles. So, he kept going in and out, in that kind of energy where he was doing really good, and then he'll fall back and then kind of rise above and then fall back, like up and down, like the rhythm of law, but in the most intense way. And which I think most people can't handle, and most people can't really, I guess, have that same resilience. I don't want to say everyone doesn't have the resilience, but if you have this placement, you probably were built for that muscle, because Saturn in the 8th house in general already gives me that you're going to get knocked down no matter what. Like, I'm so sorry to tell you, but you will get knocked down. The reason why, it's like boxing. Like, you're gonna get hit in the face, but that is part of the process of boxing. You're not ever, it's like you cannot go in boxing and not expect to win the championship without getting hit in the face. That's what it's giving you. Rocky, kind of like Rocky energy, and knocked down by within himself, within life, within his addictions, but also his out of control life. He somehow managed to keep finding his way to the light, which is very Leo rising. But I don't know too much about his personal relations romantically, but I do know when it came to getting knocked down and getting back up and being a legend after, because he's Iron Man, like he was meant, I'm sorry, I cannot imagine anyone else being Iron Man. Like he was destined for Iron Man. And on top of that, Iron Man and the whole Marvel story is like the most legend. Like he saved everyone from Thanos and all this stuff. Like he was the only possible person that can help the whole Thanos situation. But anyways, that's all Marvel and it has nothing to do with real life. But anyways, it's very Pisces energy, very in the otherly world. It's funny that he made a movie like that because it's very otherly world and possibility. You know, Pisces is very all about the possibility of more than the 3D world. But it's crazy. His life was crazy. Read about it. It's really sad. He came from being a drunk alcoholic, going to jail, up and down, people loving him in his acting, but like also bringing him down in his acting, and then up and down and left and right. And the experience he went through as a child is insane. It's actually really sad, but really, he's very inspiring because it just tells you no matter how hard it can get, you can remember that you are royal in this life. I heard someone say this in YouTube. I forgot his name, low-key. If I remember, I'll post it on the screen. He was saying that sometimes we forget that we are all royal. We're all kings and queens, and we forget because, you know, it's like, it's strange, but a homeless person ends up where they are because they probably forgot the possibility or the potential or their faith or something, you know, there's something, they got lost. They got really lost and they forgot who they were. And it's actually really sad. It makes me a little sad to think about it, but it's life and it happens to people in real life. But it's almost like he remembered who he was towards the end and he did amazing. He's an actual legend. The last example is Kristen Stewart. I'm not going to go too much in depth with it, but she had a really bad intimate relationships that led her to liberate herself. She has Uranus here as well, but it's in, I think, Capricorn. But she had to go through all the crazy things, intimate, even though she had affairs. it led her to where she is now, and now she is in a homosexual relationship, rather. I don't know what she identifies, but it kind of led her there. And, you know, a lot of people shamed her, hated her for a long time because, like, she did Robert Pattinson, like, bad or whatever, but maybe that was meant to be. And not that he deserves that, but probably it's because he wasn't meant to be with her towards the end, and he deserved something else, and she deserves something else. I don't want to go too in depth with that because honestly it's not my business and I don't really care, and I want to get more into you with Saturn in the 8th house. Okay, so Saturn in the 8th house gives me that you have fear of showing who you really are. You have fears of people using you for your money. You have fears for people loving you intimately for who you are in general. And I actually dated someone who has Saturn in the 8th house, and it's so crazy because there was so much hidden stuff that I thought I knew them, but I really didn't. And they had this fear of gold diggers. I have a feeling that had to do with his past life or something. And also he had a hard time finding resources or help in the way that he had ideally for himself. The way I saw him was that he wanted love so deeply, like crazy. He was Scorpio Venus, by the way. He wanted love like crazy, like so bad, but it just wouldn't happen for him the way he wanted. He wanted marriage, he wanted all these things, but the responsibility of it would hit him in the moment. Not that he was married, but it would kind of get to him at some point, and it was hard for him to take that responsibility. You know, I'm going to tell you the truth. If you have Saturn in the 8th house, you will have to take responsibility for your resources, whether you gain a lot or you have to work hard for it, however it comes to you, those resources. But you would definitely have to take responsibility no matter what, like with all the money that you have or without all the money that you have. And I also feel like there could be a possibility that you get married maybe in your 36 years and plus. That's not a for sure thing, but for sure after your Saturn return, then it might soften a little bit. You might learn the responsibility. The person that I dated at that time, he had a really hard time giving without having resentment. Not to shade on this person, but all I remember from the experience was that he was like, I got it, but at the same time, he wasn't ready for it. He didn't feel prepared. He felt like he needed to put more in work or something like that. And I felt like there was always resentment if I were the one to receive, because there was a lot of responsibility that he had in mind when it came to having a family and kids. It's something that he really wanted intimately with someone, but at the end, he didn't feel fully prepared. Also, keep in mind that this person is still going in their Saturn return, the one that I'm talking about. So they're building that muscle for themselves right now, and they're going to get to a place where they feel strong enough to handle those responsibilities. But yeah, Saturn's very strange like that. Like it's going to, and you know the weird part, actually, I remember this person said that their sexual encounters were a very early age, like early. I can't tell you what age because I don't want to be too, I just don't want to exploit this person in any way, but I was shocked when they told me how young they were when they lost their virginity. Like young, like if you can imagine young, like I'm talking about young. And Saturn does make you grow up pretty fast, but it delays things, so it's really weird that way. I have to start walking back home, but if you hear me huffing and puffing, sorry, I just have to walk back. It's late and the sun's basically down and it's going to be very dark soon. So okay, Saturn in general will kind of make you grow up really fast in ways that you're not prepared for. You're scared, you're confused, I wouldn't say just confused, but like it's just very strong energy. And imagine putting a kid in a situation where they're just not prepared for something yet. Well, Saturn is just cold that way. It's just like I'm teaching you the hard lessons right now. And this person learned a lot of intimate things very, very early, but probably was not ready for it. And it was a very intense, cold experience. And on top of that, the things that they wanted ideally were delayed, like marriage and love and kids and intimacy and the responsibility of resources and things like that. So don't expect to get your resources so fast from, I don't know, financial aid, from other people's resources, from your personal relationships. It's kind of like Michael Jordan. He had no idea that he was going to become a legend, but he did. But it took a while. It took a minute. Like, you really have to be patient with this stuff. And you also have to realize that Saturn, when it comes to karma, doesn't mean that you deserve it, but they're lessons that teach you a wider perspective. So, and you really want to correlate where Saturn energy is in your chart. Again, when I mention, whenever I see Saturn, I look immediately at Aquarius and Capricorn, because that leads you to something bigger than what you're expecting. So, for example, I have Saturn in the first house, and somehow, despite of all the endeavors that I've gone through so far in my life, insecurities, fears, health issues, like a lot of things, really a lot of isolation, it led me to community, which is in my 11th house, which is why I am drawn to this stuff. And there's a certain part of yourself that you learn so much about yourself. Since you have this, you have to really learn about faith and not seeing the results. You have to see it like you're planting a seed, because Saturn is about seeds. It's not about, I'm going to see the tree the next day. It's not about going viral. It's not about buying the fruit in the grocery store. It's literally planting the seed from the very beginning. Saturn is slow. It's not a fast energy. And on top of that, that's part of the karma. Saturn is time, but Saturn is also a teacher. It's like your dad. Your dad is going to tell you, no, like, I'm not going to let you sleep over at the age of 12 in a guy's house. Like, it's just not going to happen, because the dad energy, Saturn, I like to think of Saturn like the daddy energy, but it doesn't have to be that way. In mythology, it's a little bit different, which it is correlated to the dad energy, because Saturn cut off his dad's balls and all this stuff, and then he didn't learn the lesson, so he kind of turned into his dad. It's this whole thing. But anyways, let's not talk about castration. Well, Saturn here is that you have to discipline yourself amidst of the hardship of life. The 8th house is out of your control, even though it is technically a succedent house, which is weird because it's basically out of your control. You can't control life technically. Like, you can control your response to it. You can't control someone fortunately passing away. You can't control strange things in life. You can't control the whole world with taxes. Like, everyone has their own individual things going on financially, personal finances. This is definitely like a marathon energy. It's not a fast sprint. Saturn is training you for a marathon, not a relay. And the sooner you accept that, and this is very humbling energy, especially in the 8th house. You probably are very humble at this point if you are after your 30s or 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever age you are. But after your Saturn return, I definitely feel like you will understand the feeling of the marathon. But you have to embrace the recklessness of life and have the attitude of a willow tree, but also a strong, sturdy tree. It's really weird that way. I also feel like you have to think of your life a little bit like Rocky. You get hit, you keep getting up. That was the whole theme of Rocky, the first movie. He didn't technically win the first movie, but people saw him as the winner at the end. Apollo did not like that. He was like, no, like, how did I win? And by points, but I didn't actually win. Because he was the only boxer that ever stood the longest that Apollo barely beat. I would definitely recommend you watching Rocky just for fun. If you watched it a million times, watch it one more time just for fun. Because there's something about that song that goes, getting stronger. You know what song I'm talking about? And he's just running and running. And it's crazy because as you watch more of the movies of Rocky, you start to realize at the beginning it's just him and himself. No one's watching. No one's actually like cheering him on when he's running. He's cheering himself on. He's showing up every day for himself, despite of what he has in his cards in his life. In the second movie, it changes. People are recognizing him. People are admiring him. All these children are following him. And they're inspired and they start running right behind him. And he's just run up the stairs and the children are all cheering him at the end, and they're just jumping and they're just in joy because he is an inspiration. He worked hard to get to where he was. He had to learn to be very humble with himself. I think that's a really big thing with Saturn in the 8th house is humility and humbleness. And that's not to say that you're going to think of yourself that way. Usually I feel like people who think, oh, I'm very humble, are usually people that are not. It's kind of like when people say, oh, I'm brilliant, I'm smart. Usually the brilliant and smart people don't really think they're that smart or brilliant because they know how much more they need to know about stuff. Like there's the more you know, the less you know kind of thing. There could be challenges about intimacy and fears about this, which I mentioned earlier. I feel like this could be a past life thing. I would really correlate, again, I'm going to reiterate this a million times, look at where Aquarius or Capricorn is, or look into your degree as well. But I definitely feel like, okay, for example, the person that I mentioned earlier that has the Saturn in the 8th house, they had fear of expressing themselves for who they really are. They had shame about themselves, which had to do with like a little bit of the 5th house, a little bit of the 1st house. They had here's the thing, sometimes if you look at where that Capricorn or Aquarius is, it's not necessarily that area that made you feel fearful. In your case, it's really weird. Astrology, this is what I love about astrology. I used to play this video game, Professor Layton, and this game is so fun if you're into mystery and solving very complex things. That's very Virgo, by the way. But it's very mysterious. So, like, think of it like a detective. That is basically what astrology is to me. It's a mirror of what's happening now, but what is going to be a big theme of what is happening right now, actually, in your life. You know, it's a manifestation of your potential, a seed, a potential of what can occur and what you choose. It's weird because it doesn't really matter what you choose, but it matters what you choose for your soul towards the very end. And not just like the end, like, oh, I'm going to choose my choices at the end, but it's more in the sense that once you're at the end of your days, like let's say it's the last of your days, you're going to really reevaluate, is everything that you've done and experienced everything you needed to do for your soul. And sometimes I think we forget that, you know, the world is more than just taxes and sleeping and eating and talking or whatever. It's experience. You're putting it out there in the field. So astrology is very, to me, the way I see it is you are navigating your own path, following your soul, your psyche, your desires, your experiences that you need to liberate yourself. But oh gosh, here I go on a tangent about it, but the 8th house gives me that. Also, since Saturn is karmic, you learn a lot about mistakes. Saturn, unfortunately, is the area of your life where you gain a lot of wisdom through mistakes. I don't want to say it's only from mistakes, but especially in the 8th house, you experience what's on the other side. So for example, I had a conversation with my mother one day, and I understand where she's coming from to maybe 2% extent, but she was judging someone that was alcoholic, and I told her, do you know what it's like to have an addiction? And she said, no. And I said, no, you're wrong, you do. But she has a different addiction, which I'm not going to mention here because I'm not trying to exploit her. But then once I told her that, she did understand the feeling of addiction. And I told her, is it easy to overcome that overnight? And she said, no. And I said, exactly. So the thing about Saturn is that sometimes you have to experience these intense things to unpeel and liberate, but also learn wisdom from those mistakes. You know what's on the other side now. 8th house is also about STDs, by the way. And, you know, you can get involved with things like that, or sometimes Saturn can restrict you and protect you in that way, so you won't get an STD. And by the way, STIs are different than STDs. STIs are infections. STDs are disease that are dormant usually in your body. So I could say maybe Saturn can be here to protect you from those things. Maybe in your past life you had a lot of sexual encounters, there was like boundaryless energy, and Saturn was there to like constrict that a bit in this lifetime. That could be a possibility. I also feel like maybe Saturn, I do like to say Saturn is protection. So for example, Saturn in the 1st house for me, I'm not gonna lie, I was not the cutest girl in the world until later in life, but I'm really glad I was not the cutest girl. And you want to know why? Because what if I would have got pregnant really fast, or something really bad would have happened, because you know beauty makes people kind of crazy. So I do feel like me not being so pretty growing up, I mean that's just a belief, it's not a fact, but it's kind of how I felt my experience was. It kind of protected me from really bullshit energy. And I feel like the same thing could happen to you, where maybe you were restricted from a lot of intimate things, so people won't, I don't know, grasp your money, or maybe you won't overgive intimately, or it's the reverse, maybe you won't take so much, and you have to grow as a person to be responsible. You have to build muscle, literally physically in this life, but also in your brain and your heart and your strength. That is part of, it comes with life. It's the way you're going to survive here in life. The 3D world here that we live in, that you can see, because supposedly we can't see pretty much a lot of it, of what's out there. You should really look into metaphysics and quantum physics. Oh my gosh, we really don't know what's beyond than what we're seeing right now. But I mean, you don't have to. That's just like food for thought. But realize that in order to maintain and keep going in life, you do have to have that strength. And that's where Saturn comes, and Saturn teaches you about that. And it teaches you, especially in the 8th house, it's teaching you about inner strength. Even if people recognizes it later in life and they're inspired by you, and you're seen as who knows what, no one truly knows that inner strength the way you do. Everything you have gone through is the only true observation that truly felt thoroughly that strength was you. No one else. They can maybe see it after the whole merits and rewards are shown, but they don't truly see the true strength unless it's you. It's such an internal strength that no one will truly know how strong it took for you to get to where you are now. All right, to wrap this up, best way I can put it in a concise way would be that you are being the most strengthened, and you are learning the most wisdom and responsibility and true strength when it comes to crisis. Sorry, I hate saying that because like that's not the funnest route, but that is part of the path sometimes, and sometimes you be more grateful than you'll expect later. Also, keep in mind your zodiac, your element. When I mean element, if it's water, fire, air, earth. Also, keep in mind if it's cardinal, fixed sign, if it's a mutable sign. That tells you a lot of clues about your 8th house and Saturn. Look into your degree astrology. I would look into the ancient astrology one. I feel like that one's very accurate. It goes more thorough. Look into the house ruler. Look into where other Saturn aspects is, such as Capricorn and Aquarius. You want to look at all these kind of things because it kind of puts the puzzles all together, and you can kind of see a clear picture in your mind of your soul, your psyche, your path, your experience, and how it's unfolding and what you can do and your potential. So, okay, that's all I got. Whoever watches this or hears my videos, you are just probably just like me, looking into your own psyche for the fun of it, but also for the curiosity. So I really, really appreciate anyone who listens to this. I feel like the very little people that actually listen to these long videos, first of all, you have a long attention span, so high five. And second, you probably resonate with me in some way, and I really appreciate that because I love connecting with people that I feel connected to, obviously. And I also have, and this is new, I'm only putting this at the end of the video so that way I know, like, okay, this is not my kind of person. I have an Instagram in case you have questions that are a little bit more, that you want to keep more discreet. I have it in my main page. If you scroll down, you go to my bio. If you scroll down, that's my Instagram. If you send me a pink bow, I will know you come from YouTube and I will add you. My Instagram is not for anyone. It is very private and it's very intimate to myself. So only the people that hear this can get access to it. If you have questions or if you want to talk to me about anything or whatever, it's there. And yeah, I love you. I love you so much. Yeah, happy holidays. Today's the first day of 2026, and may this year be blessed for you and many tenfolds of more love. Okay, take care. And oh, by the way, comment down below if you resonate, if you want to talk about your story, if you feel like it doesn't resonate. I'm very open-minded, so whatever it is that you want to express yourself, you're more than welcome to. And yeah, take care. I love you. Have an amazing night, day, shift, morning. Bye.